just like the trailer to the documentary It's Worse Than You Think Part 2. The video you're about to watch has already been removed and taken down by the enemy. It is only by the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ the Almighty that we were able to re-upload it. Watch the entire video as fast as you can and spread it to as many people that you know that love the truth. You know, William Shakespeare once said, "All the world is a stage." This is a man that is propagated throughout schooling systems. But did you know that the Freemasons highly esteem him as one of their own? So what if this was coded language? And what if the world truly is a stage where Luciferian actors deceive the masses 24 hours, 7 days a week? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And why is that woe to us? Because you people and 62 million other Americans are listening to me right now. Because less than 3% of you people read books. Because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel, the ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people.
This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people.
And if the illuminated ones highly esteem William Shakespeare as one of their own, then certainly they would believe the same philosophy, that the world is a stage and they must act and lie, put on shows, and trick the masses that are watching. Satan is a sorcerer, a magician, a worker of magical spells. From the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, he operates out of whispering language. Hopefully you have seen our documentary called The Whispering God. If you haven't, you can watch it directly on our website at revelationsofjesuschrist.com. This documentary was reaching almost 500,000 people and was taken down by the enemy. But you have to understand that the Most High warned us in the book of Isaiah that Lucifer said that I will be like the Most High. And just as God is very precise and accurate, and he commands his servants to do things a certain way. When he commanded them to make the ark, when he commanded them to build the temple, he wanted it done precisely and exactly the way he commanded it to be done. In the same way, Lucifer, who wants to be like Christ, commands his evil servants to do things a certain way. And just as Christ uses numbers, symbols, and colors, we can see this truth all through the Bible. There are certain numbers that God uses. There are certain colors that he mentions on the breastplate of the priest, on the walls, certain colors in New Jerusalem. And symbols. But in the same way, Lucifer uses numbers, symbols, and colors. But he illegally uses these things that the Most High has created in witchcraft and magical rituals. As many of you know, we have been warning the masses for a long time how Satan uses Hollywood to brainwash the people with predictive programming, sigil, greater and lesser magic. Even the word Hollywood comes from the holly tree, which is what they make their magic wand out of. And just as a farmer plants a seed and waits for the right season for that seed to germinate and become a plant, the Luciferians plant seeds through movies, shows, cartoons, video games, news, social media, into the minds of the masses. And then they wait for the right season to bring that which they have given through predictive programming and psychological warfare to come to pass.
And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues.
The occult has many pathways that lead the blind to Mystery Babylon. However, what most don't understand is all of these pathways are interconnected. Whether it's witchcraft, voodoo, Wicca, paganism, sorcery and drugs, spiritualism and necromancy, Satanism and Luciferianism, false religions and the New Age movement, or Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Imagine if Mystery Babylon was an old, wicked tree, and all the branches represent the different areas of the occult that Satan operates through to blind the masses. Remember one thing: you will always know a tree by its fruit.
Judy and I heard about each other. I don't know if you heard about me or I heard about you.
Right.
But it was a natural relationship because we're both private investigators. I'm in Los Angeles, she's down in Long Beach. And as any good investigator would do, just to learn or hear about satanic cults isn't enough. You've got to jump into it and delve into it and develop sources and informants, which we both have done. I've been told by a woman who was born into the movement and was in it for more than 15 years, that there are several hundred satanic groups across the nation that practice human and animal sacrifice. In all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, airline pilots, educators. I have been told of one superintendent of schools who's a practicing Satanist.
You could hear them singing through the wall. Guy, my husband Guy, said it was Dr. Shand, one of these people, playing a recorder. Now, how did he know it was Dr. Shand unless he was there with them? They're very clever people. They planned everything right from the beginning. They probably made some sort of deal with Guy. They gave him success, and he promised them our baby to use in their rituals. I know this sounds crazy, but I've got books here. Look. There was another actor like him, Donald Baumgart, and they put a spell on him. They cast a spell on him and made him blind so the guy could get his part. Look, here. I had this friend, Edward Hutchins. Maybe you heard of him. A writer. He wrote stories for boys. Anyway, he was my good friend since I first came to New York.
May I keep this?
Yes, please. And look. Anyway, once Mr. Hutchins came to visit me. It was the time I was having this pain, Doctor. I was suffering so... You can't imagine how much I was suffering. And they wouldn't help me. Nobody would. They were giving me a drink with tannis root in it. Also witch's stuff, tannis root. Hutch came and immediately saw something was wrong. He knew about witches, you see. Suddenly, Guy rushed in with his makeup still on, which he never did. They probably called him to come home and steal one of Hutch's belongings, which he did. Took his glove, and they put a spell on him, too. Put him in a coma. 3 months later, he died. Now, maybe all this is coincidence, but one thing is for sure. They have a coven and they want my baby.
Certainly seems that way.
What do you think Satan was divining into the minds of the people through the movie Rosemary's Baby? Remember that Hollywood has been a divining rod in the hands of the dragon from the beginning of its empire. Through television, cartoons, music, TV shows, and video games, the God of this world has been blinding the minds of the people, corrupting them by the power of sorcery, magic, and the occult. And the Word of God tells us that this spiritual wickedness is in high places. As we go through this series of videos, scratching just the surface, trying to dig as deep down as we can to expose the roots of this old wicked tree of Babylon.
Comfort, relaxation, and sleep. Comfortable and relaxed, so it will be easier to sleep.
Our breathing is slower and deeper when we sleep. The body's temperature is lower. Even the heart beats more slowly. The whole body is resting. Dreams are normal too. Often they're suggested by things around us while we sleep.
She does a lot of daydreaming, imagining herself as the extrovert that she is not.
Dreams don't seem to make much sense, do they?
The 7th annual Witches of Delray Beach bike ride.
Witches and wizards will be taking over the streets of Chestnut Hill once again today.
Witches from across the valley will come together for a good cause.
Robinson would dress as a witch named Nelda and hang the little girl by her armpits, torture her, and not feed her.
Witchcraft and Satanism are on the rise in the United States. The second way in which our new glorious America is going to look, well, liberals are finding witchcraft. Witchcraft and Satanism is a fascinating new trend. The decline of Christianity, eradicating religion from public life. It doesn't just go away. You don't magically replace society with this atheist utopia of, pure rationality and science. What you actually do is you create a hole in people's imaginations, in people's souls.
Many of the objects on show here were used relatively recently, up until a few years ago. But witchcraft in Britain has had a huge explosion, so there's far more witches now than there ever were before.
A report in the Christian Post contends that the number of witches and Wiccans has dramatically increased since the 1990s, to a degree that there may be at least 1.5 million witches in the United States.
This is a cursing puppet. It's made of wax. It contains the hair and the blood of the intended victim. So this is a fortune-telling teacup. You give the cup of tea to the person asking questions or who's fortune.
The man who is facing charges in connection with the beating death of his mother told police he was possessed by demons.
Just turned over and then...
Florida says that it was demons that made her do it.
Your fortune is foretold depending on where they land within the cup.
Welcome to the Rothschilds Performing Arts Center.
All the world's a stage.
Under no circumstance are you allowed to take off your blindfold.
Hollywood is full of people who say that they made a league with the devil, and the devil's kept his part of the bargain.
This is a witch mirror. Magical practitioners use them for scrying, the form of divination. You put yourself into a kind of light trance.
A close friend says Stice complained of voices in his head, suffered from seizures, and had a temper.
That question will form in the glass. But there is a warning attached to it. You must never turn around to see what's in the mirror.
Joshua Granger was also in court today, and the prosecution says he would wear a demon mask during the abuse.
There's something going on under the surface here that's pretty wild. So listen to this. You guys heard of Jack Nicholson?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know who Shirley MacLaine is? Shirley MacLaine is one of the actresses that was hugely involved in the New Age movement.
Okay.
She's at the AFI, which is like American Film Institute award show or whatever, and they are honoring Shirley MacLaine, and she's telling where she gets her inspiration from, and she's talking about this one scene that she did with Jack Nicholson. Listen to what she says.
When people ask me, who is my role model in this business, I say you, Jack. Doing a love scene with Jack Nicholson is absolute middle-aged bliss. We're lying in bed and we're rehearsing the astronaut Garrett Reed love scene. He's explaining to Aurora what it was like to walk on the moon. And then we launched into the first take and two voices came out of you. Do you remember this? Two voices, and they were simultaneous words, but they were two levels of sound. And I looked over at you, you were amazed, I was amazed, and you said, well, sure, Cheryl, I'm many different people. I said, no, Jack, you're channeling.
So they all know exactly what she's talking about. That's why they're like...
because they all talk about that.
Two different voices simultaneously. You couldn't try that. Yeah. You cannot produce that.
No idea.
You know
That's
what I
like
mean?
textbook demonic possession.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've actually heard of that before,
yeah,
too.
that doesn't even feel New Age, and what I saw, that seems like straight demonic.
Do you see a guy standing there? You can actually see his face, his eyes, his nose.
Musician Chad Lawson was doing a sound check before his performance at the Paramount last night, and he snapped a couple of photos before leaving the stage. In the first photo, you see an empty staircase in the mezzanine. In the second, you see a figure in a dress. You see her?
Yes.
There you go. Then in the third photo, you see the figure is gone, but there's some distortion next to where it was on the stairs. Lawson says he snapped all those photos, one after the other.
We have reported on people saying that they've seen...
How about Hugh Jackman? And you guys know who Hugh Jackman is. Okay? Well, do you know how he became to be an actor?
Soul to soul.
No, but it's very interesting. He went on the BBC and he was telling the backstory of how he actually got his first gig. Listen to this.
It's interesting your path to acting, because you're a journalism student, aren't you?
So I'm still on hold. My journalism is still on hold. I literally was just putting it off, so I took a few part-time classes and worked at a gym. And at the gym, I met this woman who, this isn't a lie, it sounds like a made-up story, but I was actually joining her up, and she was looking at me and she just went, like that. I said, is everything all right? She said, you don't understand, I'm a white witch. You've got to get into acting immediately. I said, well, I'm doing a few part-time classes, you should mention it. She said, no, you're going to be a big star, and I want you to meet this woman, Penny Williams. I said, who's Penny Williams? She said, she's an agent. Well, I met her, and she's still my agent. And the day after, I did an audition and landed a role on Neighbours.
The very next day, he gets an audition and books the role. Why would a spirit literally talk through a medium and tell him, you need to go talk to this lady over here and you will be famous? Why are they picking him?
Why him?
followed the money, I found that it took me up the levels of a pyramid. Here we are at the bottom level going about our daily lives. Above us is government, people who are given a monopoly on force and use it to tax and control us whether or not we agree. But who controls them? At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that it is now corporations and not nation states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy.
Did you just hear what he said? He said it is now the corporations that rule and dominate in the world. This lines up perfectly with the prophecy of Revelation chapter 18, verse 23, that warns us about the abomination and how by sorcery will all the world be deceived by the beast. That word sorcery in the Greek is the word pharmakia. It's where you get the word pharmacy. Think real clear. What is from the pharmacy that is being pushed all over the world? But before that, it says that the merchants were the great men of the earth. Those that sold, those who have businesses would be the most powerful people, will be the chief people. That is what it is saying. Prophecy coming to pass, but most, sadly, don't see it.
At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that it is now corporations and not nation states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy.
This would explain why, to the Luciferians, it is so important that everything is done as if it is on a stage. Because as we have told you in documentaries in the past, most of them have been taken down or removed because of the truth within them. But if you have seen certain videos, you would remember that we warned you about sigil magic and warned you about lesser magic. This is when they have to tell you what they're going to do in order to make the spell more powerful. Because the devil knows that you are created in the image of God. He has to get your permission and for you to agree for him to put a spell on you. But you see, there are certain gray areas where they can get away with it. Without telling someone, they're putting a spell on them. And one of these ways is through Hollywood, using movies, TV shows, using video games, news, social media, because the mind is not looking at it as something literal, but to the illuminated ones, they are dead serious. So when you start to put the puzzle together and you see certain events that have taken place, and then you look into the past and find out they were using lesser magic and predictive programming before they did it. And this is something that they have been waiting and waiting and waiting for. Because everything has to be done in a season of time. So as the highly esteemed Freemason once said, the whole world is a stage. These Luciferians have to continue the movie. They have to continue this great plan. But have you ever wondered why they're so fascinated with the black and white checkered floor? The same checkered floor that a game of chess is played on. And speaking of chess, this is a game that was invented a long time ago. It's a game that takes craftiness. It's a game that takes pre-planning and foreseeing moves and trying to outwit the opponent. It's a game where soldiers are sacrificed for the greater good of the victory. But have you ever considered that to the Luciferians, the whole world is a chessboard? And that the white square represents how they masquerade as messengers of light. The black squares represent who they really serve, which is the Prince of Darkness. And could it be that as they look at the world as a giant chessboard, have you ever considered that they're playing on both sides of the chess game? Have you ever heard of the Hegelian dialectic? What if all of the rulers of the world, kings and queens, presidents, dictators, truly do serve one master behind the closed doors in the darkness? And when they gather together to speak about what will be planned out years in advance, they are activating chess players on the black and white board. But this isn't a normal game where you're watching two people who are opposed to one another, playing against each other. The secret you must know right now is that the beast plays on both sides of the chess game. So the dragon decides what player will move where on his chessboard in his world. Remember, he is the god of this world. You see, for Satan to execute his final plan, to bring the world together, to place the beast in the heart of men, he had to wait for the human race to get to a level of intelligence where the book of Daniel's prophecy would come to pass, that knowledge would increase. He would have to wait for this day, for technology and for the use of electricity to be brought forth, for his diabolical plan to come to pass. We live in a day and age where you have to be careful what you receive as truth. In this last hour, they can make things appear in the sky that are not even there. Half the movies that you have ever watched have scenes that don't even exist. What do I mean by that? It means that while the camera was recording, the actors were in front of a green screen, and they digitally put in a world in the movie that your eyes cannot tell you wasn't real. Remember that Satan is the great deceiver, the whisperer, the father of all lies. So how does your mind determine what is truth and what is false when it comes to what you see and hear on social media, movies, the news, on your technology devices. So who is the wizard behind the green screen curtain? The Most High warned us in the last days. They will hate good and love evil. They will reject the truth and embrace the lies. Where the saints of the Most High God will be labeled the enemy of the world. Because many are not willing to tell you the truth at the expense of being hated, slandered, and rejected by millions. But no servant is greater than their master. And if they hated me, they will hate you, the Lord Jesus Christ said. Let us carry on, as we had to stop with the editing of the documentary to give you this, because time is moving faster. Or maybe to you, that's just another coincidence, and I'm just doing this for views. Maybe this documentary is not for you. But what if? What if it really goes this deep? What if, to the Luciferians, it is very important to them that every detail is brought forth in their agenda? That to work their magical spells, they have to use lesser magic and show your eyes and speak to your ears what they're going to do. And when you do not reject it while you watch the movie, while your child watches the cartoon, while you play that video game, while you scroll through social media and watch what is going on in the news, when your mind does not reject that seed that they are trying to plant in you through magical spells, you give them the permission because you did not reject it. And Satan has found a way to get legal ground on so many without them even knowing it, because they thought it was all entertainment. But the very word entertainment means to be detained for entry. Now remember, my hope is that this video will remain online as long as possible, but it takes for you to help spread this video to as many that love truth as possible, as fast as possible. My hope is that this spell will break off of as many as possible at the mighty name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the Almighty. But I have to speak this truth to you, that your understanding would open and you would see it for what it is. You see, what you have to know is if you see the agenda of Lucifer, and if you are exposed to how he operates his witchcraft, sorcery, and magical spells, once you are aware of it, then you will reject it and it will no longer have power over you. And this is why I had to take the time and stop where I was editing It's Worse Than You Think Part 2 to give you this video, because time is running out. And I have to make sure that the knowledge I'm about to give to you is brought to you. So that way you have this while you're waiting for this documentary to come out. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. What if the grid goes down? Look at how they are already letting you know that food is going to be at a crisis like never before. It is time for you to prepare and get your house in order. Seek Christ while he may be found. The way I'm trying to explain it to you, if you would just look at this world, where Satan is the chess player at the top, which means you have to look at it through a military mind frame, through a military understanding. He is strategizing and moving chess pieces across the earth. One of the strategies of war is to flank your enemy, to trick your opponent. Have you ever heard of the story, the Trojan Horse, where they offered a gift at the gate of their enemy? They got in their boat and pretended to sail away. And the gates opened up, and their adversary let this great horse into their kingdom. And they celebrated and said, our enemy has given up, they have retreated. And later on that night, after they have drank and celebrated and were passed out all through the city, the belly of that horse opened up. And the top assassins that were assigned came out, slaughtered the soldiers at the gate. And those ships that looked like they were sailing away came back around and invaded and sacked the city. So do you think it could be possible that because the world is a stage, and because they know the children of God also use social media to warn the masses, they would have to try to flank you and trick your understanding by simply stopping mandates, saying we no longer need to wear this covering on our face, and you no longer need the abomination, after billions have already been bitten by the serpent. Because they are trying to get those that have been opposed and those that have been on the fence, not wondering, is this truly the abomination that Christ warned us about, or is it not? But I am warning you not to celebrate. You have to understand and know how a psychopath operates, especially a genius psychopath. Narcissists and sociopaths plot and plan their moves to use and destroy people. So start looking at this world as a chessboard, so that way you are not gullible to just quickly believe what you see and hear, but test everything and take it to the Lord. Let me ask you a question. Let's say you are a woman who is being abused every single day. You're beaten by your boyfriend. He has no mercy for you. And then one day he comes with flowers and tells you he loves you. Would you fall for it? Or would you know that something is not right? This is not his character, so why is he doing this? Don't you find it strange that certain countries went from 500 degrees of enforcing to all of a sudden canceling them overnight? You don't find that strange? I mean, we did try to warn you in the documentary, The Boiling Frogs of Babylon, how they operate. But notice, right prior to this war starting in Ukraine, they switched up their tactics. But you see, while you're celebrating and while you're focused on foolishness, like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock in the face, which by the way, was all acting, while they are distracting you to look over to the right, they're passing laws to the left. And do you think they really have a plan to end mandates when they are passing laws from December, January, February, March that have everything to do with monitoring those who have been bitten and those that have not? You will know a tree by its fruit. And while the world is distracted and focused on Russia and Ukraine, this is part of their great reset, because they need these excuses to shut everything down. And doesn't it appear that America has been chosen by these Luciferians in their secret meetings to be a sacrifice on the altar of the beast. Can't you see how they are starting to change the way oil is bought and sold, and the US dollar is holding on by a thread? Because it is part of the plan to bring everybody to reset. The person with 250,000 in the bank and the person negative 20 in the bank will be reset to zero, where they can use the excuse of famine and food shortages due to this manufactured war to tell you you must take the abomination and continue the ritual, or starve, be imprisoned, and eventually killed. But I will tell you a secret. If you want to know what will ripple to the rest of the earth, pay attention to the red dragon in the east. What goes on there spreads. You notice it is strange that world leaders are now starting to admire and highly esteem the president of the red dragon, as if the way they treat their citizens is honorable. But it's part of the agenda, because remember, the dragon gives the beast power, and the rulers of the earth give their allegiance to him, and he decides what goes on in his world. So this red dragon has just started a new lockdown. While people are deceived in America, thinking the coast is clear, off in the distance of the east, the dragon is pushing forth more ripples and mandates. And I want you to hear this very carefully. What is going on in Ukraine is part of the plan. And what is very probable and highly likely is they are going to use this as an excuse to introduce a new strand of you-know-what to the nations. It just so happens to be that they are saying in the Ukraine there are laboratories. And it just so happens to be that Ukrainian people are being sent all over the world as refugees. But remember, if this is a game of chess, they planned this a long time ago. The beast already planned this move on the chessboard, on the great black and white checkered floor. Could it be that just like that, the same way they shut everything down once, are you so gullible to think they can't do it again? And now, with most of the world already injected with the abomination, they can focus more on those who have been on the fence and those that have opposed it. Because it's easy now to change the minds of the people, to look at those who stand for truth and stand against the abomination as the enemy.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society, and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research or that they are above the law and they can break the rules. Australia, Novak Djokovic, Australia said, no. We're going to look at the greater good of everyone in our society, and you're not part of that.
If it was up to me, anyone unvaccinated would not be admitted to a hospital. At this point, they've been given plenty of opportunity to get the vaccine. They don't trust our government. They think that there's some conspiracy to turn them into a magnet or something like this. Now, if you don't get it, in my America, all hospitals would be closed to you. You're going to go home and die.
If it was up to me.
When people are seeing cancer treatments and elective surgeries put off because beds are filled with people who chose not to get, they're frustrated. When people see that we're in lockdowns or serious public health restrictions right now because the risk posed to all of us by people get angry.
What do you think about this new epidemic of people being angry with the unvaccinated?
I think they have a right to be angry. And not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
The consequences of you not being back is, I'm not going to shut the fuck up. I'm going to be in your mother ear driving you crazy. You know that Sopranos episode where Tony Soprano, where that guy just started blasting the music just to drive the neighbor crazy? Yeah. That is going to be me. I'm going to be in your ear telling you back.
The plea you just gave us, what is it going to take to get people to get shots in August?
I don't know, you tell me. Folks supposed to have common sense. But it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks. It's the unvaccinated folks that are letting us down.
As the ones who continue to allow sickness to spread, you see? But we've already warned you that this day would come way back 2 years ago. I spoke prophetically to you, but of course, that video was taken down. I let you know that the same way Hitler used propaganda, used technology, which was the radio at that time, to brainwash the people to hate a certain group of people to the point where they willfully wanted to imprison, rape, and kill them, is the same way the beast is using social media right now to cause people to hate you because you stand against the abomination. And now they're changing laws and what they consider a terrorist.
As of February the 7th, 2022, the United States Department of Homeland Security just recently updated their guidelines regarding terrorism and terroristic threats to the United States. They made it their business to include anything that has to do with questioning narratives or being a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist.
And one of the most wickedest men on the earth, who has pushed more of the abomination than any other, has said with his own words that those who stand against this are criminals.
And this is who are the criminals.
Now, he said the folks who are getting swept up by this misinformation, it's understandable that they may be afraid, but really saying that the people deliberately spreading misinformation, those people are essentially making criminal acts.
But yet to stand against it, he says we are the criminals. What a wicked, sociopathic psychopath. But let's go back to the green screen curtain. Just like all the things that have been propagated through mind control, lesser magic, and PSYOP programs that have been going on for a long time.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided. I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of the CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
But sadly, so many that are blinded will ignore the voice crying in the wilderness and trust the fact checkers online. But they never do their research to find out who is paying these fact checkers online. Well, just with a little research, I found out that the same person that you see on the screen is the same company that is financially supporting and backing the fact checkers online. So let that sink in. The company that decides who is telling the truth and who is promoting lies is the same company being paid by the same people that are promoting the abomination. Are you starting to see how the game is rigged and the beast plays both sides of the chessboard?
Speak the truth, you lose.
lose so many friends and even family. That's when you'll find out everything in this world is truly vanity. Somebody pinch me and tell me this has all been a dream. I try to wake up, but deep down I know it's not a dream. Please wake me and tell me this is nothing but a dream. How could so many line up and take the mark of the beast? I try to block it out my mind like it isn't real. To see so many people fall away, can you relate to how that feels?